Today we're doing 9.2 surface area of pyramids. Our I can statement for today, I can find surface area of regular pyramids and I can solve real life problems. So the key idea here, surface area of a pyramid, similar to the surface area of what we did for prisms. You take a look at the net. There's a picture here of a square pyramid, has a square base and 4 triangles. Because the base is a regular polygon, that means all the sides are the same. That means all the triangles on our shape are going to be the same as well. So we're going to find the area of the base, that's the square. We're going to find the area of one triangle and then times it by 4 because there are 4 of them. And then we're going to add them all together. Those triangles are called lateral faces because they're the side, not the base. And the distance from the base up to the tip, that's the slant height. That's the number we need to use for the area of our triangles. So for this first one, surface area of a regular pyramid, again, regular pyramid, that means that all the sides of the base are the same. All of the ones we will see in this chapter are going to be regular pyramids. That means the triangles are going to be equal. Okay, so if we take a look at this picture over here, we have got a square pyramid. I'm going to outline that base here so you can see a little bit better that that is a square. It's slanted, so it kind of looks like a parallelogram, but it really is a square. They tell us one side is 5 inches, but because we know it's a square, that means all the sides are going to be 5 inches. So when we find the area of the square, we do length times width. I like to draw the little shapes to keep my work organized. You certainly don't have to do that, but I'm going to do that today on our notes just so you can kind of follow my process for what I'm doing. So the square is length times width. If I look at my picture here, my length and width are 5. So I'm going to do 5 times 5. That tells me that the area of my square is going to be 25 inches squared. So now I'm going to do the triangles. Because it's a regular pyramid, that means all the triangles are the same size. So I'm going to do 1/2 base times height. That's the area of one of the triangles. And then I'm going to times that answer by 4 because there are 4 equal-sized triangles. So my base and my height, if I look at my triangle here, I've got a base of 5, that's the side of my square, and then I have a height of 8. So I'm going to do divided by 2 instead of times 1/2 for my triangle. You can do it either way. So I'm going to do my base, 5 times 8, divided by 2. That's for one triangle. And then I'm going to do times 4. Now you can do that all in one step if you want. I'm going to show it to you in 2 steps. So 5 times 8, that's 40, divided by 2 is 20. The area of one triangle is going to be 20. And then we're going to times it by 4 because there are 4 equal-sized triangles. That gives me 80. So then for my last step, I need to add those two values together. So I had 25 as the area for my square. I had 80 for the area of my 4 triangles. And now I'm going to add those two values together. So 25 for the square plus 80 for the triangles. That's going to give me a surface area of 105. And then remember, area is always in square units. So my final answer needs a label, and that label is going to be inches squared. All right, let's take a look at this next one. It says, what is the surface area of a square pyramid with a base side length of 9 centimeters and a slant height of 7 centimeters? I'm going to go ahead and just sketch out that picture for those of you that would help. So here's my base. They said it was a square and the side lengths are 9, so I'm just going to label it 9 centimeters here, 9 centimeters here. All right, I'm going to pick a point, make my triangles. It's a little slanted, that's okay. My height, my slant height here on that triangle, they tell me that is 7 centimeters. All right, so now I have everything I need to find the surface area. I always like to start with the base. So I'm going to start with my square. We're doing length times width, remember? Okay, so my length times width here for my base is 9 and 9. Those are the side lengths of my square. So 9 times 9, that's 81. So the area of my square for the base, that's going to be 81. Now I'm going to do my area of my triangles. They're all the same. For one triangle, it's 1/2 base times height. And then I have 4 triangles, so I need to take that times 4. All right, so my base and my height looks like here are 9 and 7. So I'm going to do 9 times 7 divided by 2. That's for the 1/2. That divided by 2 is the same as 1/2 times 4. Okay, so 9 times 7, that's 63. And then I need to take that and divide it by 2. So that's going to give me 31.5 as my area for my one triangle. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to times it by 4. So when I take 31.5 and I times it by 4, I get 126. So now I have the two numbers I need. I have 81 for the base. I have 126 for my 4 triangles. And now I'm going to add those together. So I'm going to do 81 plus 126. All right, and then let's see. When I add those together, I get 207 centimeters squared. And that's my surface area for that square pyramid. All right, so here, same directions. Find the surface area of the regular pyramid. So our sides are still the same. Our triangles are still the same. But this time I have a triangular pyramid. If you look at the bottom here, it's a triangle. So that means I'm going to have 3 faces instead of 4. Base is a triangle, 3 faces. So I'll write that down so you can see it. Base is a triangle. That means 3 faces. Now, often the base triangle is going to be a different size than the face triangles. Every once in a while, they're the same, but most of the time, the base and the faces are going to be different. All right, so I'm going to start with my base triangle. Okay. Remember, we're still using that formula of 1/2 base times height for our triangles. We only have one triangle there, so we don't need to times it by anything. Okay, so base times height. If I look at my triangle that's on the bottom here, I have the side length of 10. That's going to be true for all the sides. They're going to be 10 meters. And then I have this number of 8 and 7/10. And if you look at the arrow, that tells me that's the height of the triangle on the base. Okay, so I'm going to use base is 10, okay, times 8.7, 8 and 7/10. And then I'm going to do that divided by 2. All right, so let's see. 10 times 8.7, that would be 87. And then when I divide that by 2, I would get 43.5. That's the area for my base triangle. Okay, so now I'm going to do my face triangles. And like I said before, there are 3 of them. Still using 1/2 base times height for that triangle area. That hasn't changed. But because we have 3 of them and they're all the same size, and I know they're the same size because it says it's a regular pyramid. All of the ones we're going to do in this chapter are regular pyramids. Okay, so I can times it by 3 because there are 3 of them. They're all equal. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my numbers. Now, if I look at my triangle here on the side, I'm going to erase the stuff that I have over here, this outline. Erase that all off. Okay, so if I look at the triangle on the side, here I'll outline it. There it is. I can see that the base of that triangle is 10 meters. That's the same as the side length that it was over here. Sides are the same. And then I have this 14 meters, and the arrow shows me that's the height of my face triangle. You have to pay attention to those arrows and see where they point so you're making sure to use the right numbers. Okay, so I'm going to put my numbers into my formula now. 10 times 14 divided by 2 times 3. 10 times 14, that's 140, and then divided by 2, that's going to give me 70. That's the area of one triangle, and then I'm going to do times 3. That's going to give me 210. That's the area of my second triangle, my face triangles. So now I'm ready to add everything together. I'm going to do that over here to the side. So 43 and a half, that's the base, plus 210, those are all my face triangles together. Okay, and then when I add those values together, I get 253.5, and then that's going to be meters squared. Area and surface area are always in square units. So 253 and a half meters squared. That's my answer. All right, so let's take a look at the story problem. It says a roof is shaped like a square pyramid. One bundle of shingles covers 25 square feet. How many bundles should you buy to cover the roof? So we're talking about how much we need on the outside of the roof. And so that's surface area. We're covering the area. Now, they tell us it's a square pyramid. That tells me I'm going to have 4 triangles. But because I'm not putting triangle or shingles on the base of that, I'm not putting shingles on the ceiling inside the house. I'm only putting them on the roof. The 4 triangles, that's all I have to do for the area part. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do my triangles. We're going to do 1/2 base times height for the area of one triangle. We're going to times by 4 because there are 4 of them. And we're not worrying about the square because we're not putting shingles on the bottom of that roof. Okay, so base and height, they only give us 2 numbers here. That makes it a little bit easier for us. Here's our triangle. And the numbers they give us are 15 feet and 18 feet. All right, so I'm going to do 18 times 15 divided by 2. That's for the area of one of the sides of the roof, one triangle. And then because I have 4 of them, I'm going to take that and times by 4. All right, so I'm going to start by doing 18 times 15 divided by 2. That gives me 135. And then I'm going to take that times 4. And when I do that, I get 540 feet squared. That's the surface area of my roof. But that's not what they asked me for. They asked me for how many bundles. All right, so I'm taking my surface area and I'm splitting it up into groups of 25 square feet because I need to know how many bundles it's going to take. So 540 for my surface area. I'm going to divide by the 25 feet for the bundles. Each one of those bundles is going to cost 25 feet. All right, and so when I do that division, I get 21 and 6/10 bundles. But unfortunately, I can't go to the store and buy 6/10 of a bundle. They're not going to sell it to me. So I have to actually round on this one. And for story problems, you do need to use a little logic. Sometimes you're going to need to round, sometimes you won't. It doesn't matter if this was a 0.6, this decimal here, or a 0.2. You always have to round up because even if I only need 2/10 of a bundle, I'm still going to have to buy an extra bundle for that. So 22 bundles, that's how many I'm going to need. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our next one. Okay, so pause the video for a second and go ahead and try problem number 2. Find the surface area of the regular pyramid to the right. Okay, let's go ahead and check to see if you solved that one correctly. So we're going to start with the base. I always like to start with the base. When I'm looking at the base, these are the numbers that I see. 6 feet on the bottom, and then I see that 5 and 2/10 feet. That's pointing to the height of my base. Those are the 2 numbers I need for my formula. Okay, so for my base triangle, remember formula for triangle, 1/2 base times height. So my base is 6. My height is 5 and 2/10. And then I have to take my answer and divide by 2 for that times 1/2 part. Okay, so when I multiply that out, I get 15 and 6/10. That's the area of my base triangle. Now I'm going to multiply for my face triangles. I have 3 of them that are all equal because it tells me it's a regular pyramid, and I can see on the bottom that it's a triangle on the bottom. So for my face triangles, I'm going to do 1/2 base times height. That's going to tell me the area for one triangle. And then I'm going to times by 3 for the area of all 3. So I'm going to go back over to my picture, and I'm going to look at the triangles on the side, and I'm going to see what numbers I need. So here's my triangle on the side. The base is the side length. That's the same as this part. Okay, so that's going to be 6 feet. And then my slant height here is 10 feet. Those are the numbers that I need for my formula. Okay, so I'm going to do 6 for my base times 10 for my height, divided by 2 because it's a triangle, and then times 3 because there are 3 of that size triangle. 6 times 10, that's 60, divided by 2, that's 30. And then 30 times 3, that's going to be 90. That's the area of my face triangles. So now I'm ready to add together to get my total surface area. So I have 15 and 6/10 for my base. I have 90 for all of my faces put together. And then when I add that together, I get 105 and 6/10 feet squared. Don't forget that label at the end of your problem. All of the problems you're doing in this chapter, they're always going to have some sort of label on them. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this one down at the bottom. So I'm going to move it up so you can actually see. This one says, in example 3, one bundle of shingles costs 32 square feet. How many bundles should you buy to cover the roof? Go ahead and pause the video and try this one. Okay, so for this one, the surface area is still the same as in that last problem, which was 540 square feet. This time, instead of dividing by 25, we're dividing by 32. When we do that, we get 16.875, so 875 thousandths. And then we need to round because, again, I can't find a decimal of a bag of shingles. So actually, I need 17 bundles of shingles. All right, so now we have a composite figure. The idea here is the same as composite figures in Chapter 8. We're going to find the area of all the parts. We're going to add them together. It's just now our parts look like a 3-dimensional shape instead of a 2-dimensional shape. Okay, so we have to identify the different sizes of shapes and how many there are. When we have things like this part right here that are touching each other and are on the inside, we don't count that. We only count the things that are on the outside. So I'm going to start with my cube first. So if I look at my cube, I have squares on every side, and there are 5 of them. So for my cube, I'm going to do length times width, and then I'm going to times by 5 because there are 5 squares. There are 4 on the outsides, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's the one that's on the bottom, 5. Okay, so length times width. My length and width are 2 feet. I can see 2 feet here, 2 feet here, length and width. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 times 2 times 5. I'm going to go ahead and just do that in one step. 5 times 2 is 10 times 2. That's going to give me 20. Okay, so those are for all my squares. Now I'm going to do my triangles. So for my pyramid, I only have my face triangles. I don't have any base triangles or the base of the square because I don't have that part on the outside. I have it on the inside. So I'm going to do my face triangles here. So if I look at my face triangles, I'm going to erase my drawings here. When I look at my face triangles on this pyramid, here's one. I need this 3 feet, that's my height. And then I have to look at the base here, this part. That's going to be 2 feet. I know that because I can look down below it and it tells me that side length of the square is 2. Okay, so for the pyramid, for those triangles, we're doing 1/2 base times height. And since we have a square base, we've got it times by 4. All right, so my numbers, I've got 3 times 2 divided by 2. That's for the triangle, times 4 for my 4 triangles. So 3 times 2 is 6 divided by 2, that's 3. Times 4, that gives me my surface area of 12. So I have 20 for my 5 squares. I have 12 for my 4 triangles. And now I'm going to add those parts together. So I have 20 plus 12. That's going to give me a surface area of 32 feet squared. Okay, our last one here. This one's a little tricky because it's actually not a pyramid on the top. It's a triangular prism. So we're going to do the same idea. We're going to look at all of the different shapes. We're going to add them all together. So I've got a rectangular prism and a triangular prism. I'm going to start with the rectangular prism first. Okay, so remember for the rectangular prism, we have 2 times blank, 2 times blank, 2 times blank. But for this one, the top part of the prism, for that rectangular prism, this part right here, doesn't count because it's got a different prism sitting on top of it. So there's only going to be one for the base. So I'm going to start with the ones on the side here. These little ones are 3 times 4. So I have 2 times 3 times 4. 2 times 3, that's 6, times 4 is going to give us 24. Now I'm going to do the ones that are on the front and the back of the rectangular prism. So the ones on the front and the back, that's this part right here. Since this side is 3, this is going to be 3 as well. So I have to do 2 times 8 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6, times 8 is going to give you 48. And then for my bottom, my base of that rectangular prism, I only have one. Again, because the top part, the rectangle that would be the size of it, has a different prism on top, so that one can't count. All right, so I have 8 times 4 for my base. That's going to give me 32. All right, so those are all numbers that I'm going to add together. I guess I'll go ahead and do that for my prism. Okay, so that gives me a surface area of 104 for all the parts of the rectangular prism. Okay, so now I'm going to do my triangular prism. Now when we do a triangular prism, remember we have 2 triangles that are the same size. And then we have 3 different rectangles. However, on this one, we actually have 2 rectangles because one of the rectangles is the one that's on the bottom that we've already crossed out. The one that's on the bottom, this part, this rectangle on the prism, doesn't count for the surface area. That's on the inside of the shape, not the outside of the shape. So we have really 2 rectangles and 2 triangles for the prism that we need to do. For the triangles, I'm going to erase here so you can see it a little bit better. We have to look for the 2 parts of the triangle that form the right angle. So here's one of my triangles. If I look down, that tells me this side length of the triangle is 8. And if I look to the side, it tells me this side of the triangle is the 6. And I know those are the parts of the triangle I need because of this right angle that's marked here. Okay, so for the triangle, remember we do 8 times 6 divided by 2. That counts as 1 triangle. And then times 2 because we have 2 of them. Now, if you want, you can think about the divided by 2 and the times 2 parts canceling out. And so really, we only need to do 8 times 6 is 48, but that counts for both triangles. Now we're going to do the 2 rectangles. So for our rectangles, we have to find the height of the prism. That's the distance between the triangles. So if I look here, the distance between my triangles, that's that part. And if I look down to the bottom, it tells me that that height is 4. That means my 2 rectangles are going to be 4 times something. So then I have to look to see what that second number is actually going to be. So this rectangle on this side If you look, that side is 6, and then the other side is 4. So 4 times 6, that's going to be 24. And then my last rectangle, it's really skinny and hard to see. It's over here, this part. I know my height is 4. I said this part was 4, so that means this part is 4. And then we have this number 10. It's hard to see how wide it is just the way it's drawn, but I know that's a 10 by 4 rectangle on the top. So I do 10 times 4, that's 40. And now I'm going to add my triangular prism parts together. Now I could have waited and added all my answers together if I wanted in one step, but since I separated it with the labels, rectangular prism, triangular prism, I'm going to go ahead and just add those as separate parts before I put the parts together. So it looks like I have 112 as being my surface area for the triangular prism part. So now I'm ready for my final step, which is to add things together. So over here, I'm going to write it 104 for the rectangular prism plus 112 for my triangular prism. And when I add those two values together, I get 216 inches squared. Don't forget the label.